am back with another video for Tonic Studios. I'm going to create a card using the Woodland Walk craft kit number 20. It's also most of the stuff from the just the Woodland Walk trend itself, which was released at the beginning of April. And it's a really simple card, but I think it's got lots of texture and movement, and I like the way it turned out. So I'm just going to get right to it and get started with some of the Glimmer paste. This is the new Glimmer paste that's part of the Woodland Walk collection. It is Rich Cocoa, and it is a gorgeous color. I'm going to use this teeny dot stencil from the Crafter's Workshop and line it up over just some plain white cardstock. That is what I use when I print out, stuff from my computer that's, not like Neenah, but just, plain cardstock. I think it's a recycled one. So I'm going to use my little Nuvo spatulas to spread that around. And you'll see, actually, when I pulled it up there, I had a little boo-boo at the bottom, but it gets covered up, so it doesn't matter that much. All right, while that is drying, I'm going to use some of the new shimmer powder that is in the color Falling Leaves on a piece of the watercolor paper that comes in the little block that's A2 size, which is awesome. And I have been doing this thing where I'm using the shimmer powder more in a kind of like you would with distress inks, where you spray and then you would dip it back in there just to get build up a lot of layers. And that does take time unless you use your drying tool, which I eventually do because I'm impatient. But I did, while that's drying, I'm going to go ahead and cut out a million circles. So I'm going to use two different of the basic dies from Tonic, the scalloped circles and then the regular circles. And I'm going to cut them out using my Gemini, which I was told by Laurel Beard. She's awesome. If you don't follow her, she's hilarious. And she told me when I got the Gemini and I hadn't set it up yet, she told me it would be a game changer. And I kind of just didn't believe it because I thought, I've got the big shot. That's great. And she was right. I love it. And I use it pretty much almost every day. In fact, I don't know if I would be die cutting as much as I do if I didn't have it. So, all right, I cut out a bunch of circles because you're going to see I'm going to make a bunch of layers, and I'm indecisive girl, so I have to cut out a bunch to figure out what it is I'm going to want to do. So I'm going to keep doing this little method here where I just put some shimmer powder down on my Easy Clean mat, spray it with some water, and then I'll dab up some of the stuff as it kind of goes along and dries around. And again, while that one's drying, I'm going to cut out one of these strip die sentiments. The scripty sentiment die is Hello. It's the Hello. And I'm going to cut it out of this beautiful mirror cardstock in the color Rustic Dusk. And it's like a deep copper color, and that's my favorite right now. It is so beautiful. It's the high gloss, which I really don't use as much as the satin, but in a small situation like this, and because it's sort of the focal piece of the card, it works so well. And I think I've already used several of the sheets of this already. So what I wanted to do with this card is just create something simple with lots of layers, repeat the circles because of the stencil, and to make it kind of just two colors, just green and brown. And really, use as much of the, and then there's some metallics, as much of the Woodland Walk colors as I could. So a lot of it is really fallish, so I wanted to have this kind of fresh spring greeny color. And okay, you'll see now I'm really using my heat tool to kind of speed up a little bit of this process. And I just love the way that layered looks. I love shimmer powders just in kind of a single layer as a very light watercolor wash. But I thought this has a lot of interest and depth to it. And with a simple card, I thought it needed a little bit of that. And if you didn't see that magic, I can put the top on a Nuvo bottle one-handed. Thanks. Yep. Okay. Now I'm going to cut out some vellum circles Sorry, actually I already did that. Out of the same scalloped circles, and I think I only used the scallop circles for that because I wanted the vellum to lay down on top of the green to make it a little bit more subtle and match another piece of the collection I'm going to use. I cut that out using one of the rectangle basics dies, and I don't know why I did that because I cut it down. So that was a complete, pointless activity. And as you can see, I've got basically the makings of 2 cards, which I have been doing now more and more because either I cannot make up my mind, change my mind somewhere after the way, or I do like it and I want to wish I had another one. So that's what I've been doing. And that's kind of the way it's going to look. I'm going to play Shuffle the Circles for a while. Like I said, Indecisive Girl. And that is this amazing, it's one of the specialty papers that comes in the craft kit number 20, and it's part of the Woodland Walk collection. And they're like handcrafted cotton papers. And this is the oak wood grain. It's a really intense like wood grain pattern, and it's got lots of texture, and it is just gorgeous. And you'll see there, I decided that I didn't like the dark green as much as I like this lighter green that I had done earlier. So I'm going to use the light green for this one and then save the darker green because I wanted it to look more like this piece of this other circle that you can see. I did that off camera, but that's a piece of the Pearlescent card in Fresh Mint. That's part of the collection, and I believe one piece of that comes in the kit. And I just used some heat embossing powder in the color Copper Blush around the edges. I just dipped my ink pad in it, put the powder on it, and heat set it just to kind of give it a little bit of definition around the edge. So now that's pretty much the way it's going to be. I finally quit shuffling circles and decided how I'm going to do it. And so I'm going to start putting things together. I'm going to glue these 2 layers on top of each other. I really didn't need to do that. I could have just cut out a regular hello out of cardstock, or I could have just used one, but I did 2. So, and I really, this is actually probably the first time I've used this without using each of the scripty dies sentiment dies comes with the border, and then the script is sentiment itself. And this is probably the first time I've used it without the border on it. So anyway, that's another little circle of foam that I popped that wood grain piece on to the vellum with. And then I put the pearlescent piece on top of that. And then the sentiment will sit on top of all of that. And like I said, I put the vellum on the bottom because I wanted it to mute a little bit of the shimmer powder, the green shimmer powder, and make it more kind of that minty green color instead of as bright green as it turned out to be. So this is my card base. I'm going to score at 5.5 to make a top folding A2 size card. And I've cut down the stenciled piece just a teeny little bit smaller. I think maybe a 1/4 inch smaller on each side, so there's just 1/8 of an inch border around it. And then I'm going to put some foam tape on the back of the watercolor piece and adhere it down. And I am not shy with foam tape or adhesive in general because I can't stand the thought of sending somebody a card and them getting it in the mail and it falling apart, after they get it, or a couple days later, or, it gets torn up in the mail or something. So anyway, I love the way that contrast looks of the green kind of flowy watercolors, and then the Glimmer paste has a real texture, but it's like this sort of organized grid of the circles, and then all the texture from this wood grain pattern. I just love the way that all kind of came together, which is unusual. Doesn't really happen, at least not until after maybe I go through it a couple times. So now that that's pretty much all together, I'm going to use my smooth precision pen to glue the sentiment strip on top. And then I'm going to do a sort of a secondary sentiment using the a little tiny sentiment words from Avery Elle that I'm going to heat emboss. I picked these out and I got the You Are Amazing piece, and then I'm going to use that on vellum, and I'm going to use my Nuvo, well, I'm going to use my embossing powder tool, and then I'm going to stamp it with the Nuvo Clear Marks ink and heat emboss it using that same copper blush. And I'm stingy here with my vellum, and I'm going to use one of the leftover circles to stamp this tiny sentiment on. And you'll see I bought these sentiment strip dies for this reason, so that they would be straight and I wouldn't mess it up and I wouldn't have to do it 5,000 times, and I managed to mess it up. It is cut straight, but the sentiment is offset and it's not straight, so I have to do it twice, which, you know, it's part of it. So I'm gonna sprinkle on the powder here, and then I'm gonna do this twice, and then I will heat it up. I just did a kind of a big clean out in my craft room and tried to put a lot of things away, and so there's so much static in there right now. So as you can, I don't know if you can see it there, but it is offset and it's driving me crazy. So I'm going to redo it. So I'm going to stamp it again on the vellum, re-ink it, pour more powder on it, and this time, because I cut it so small, I couldn't use the flag die. I just used one of the plain little tiny rectangular sentiment strip cutters, or dies from Avery Elle that are sort of go along with that. I'm going to hold it with my tweezers because it is so tiny, and I just barely go over it. It doesn't take much, and when you're stamping these teeny tiny little sentiments like that, I barely touch it. In fact, I don't like to use my Misty because I will end up pushing on it or something, and you kind of end up blurring the letters, and they're not as legible. So, I mean, I really barely touch it, and I usually use a block. I'm going to use my smooth precision glue pen to glue that on, and it kind of hangs off the side a bit. And that's pretty much it, except I'm going to add some Nuvo drops. Can't forget those. I'm going to add 2 of the colors that are part of the Woodland Want collection. The crystal drops, they're both crystal drops, the Dirty Bronze and the, what's the other one? It's not the one I have. It's something, I think it's mustard gold. It's like more of a yellowy gold than the bright gold. And then I'm going to use the copper penny, which is one of my favorites. It is not part of that collection, but it's still really good. And it goes along with that embossing powder really well. So I add some of those. You see I had a little boo-boo there where the copper was and tried to clean it up. I'm going to keep trying to clean it up there. And that is the finished card. Thanks so much for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed this video. Give me a thumbs up if you like, and I'd love any feedback or comments if you have them. And I will be back with another card very soon. Bye.